I've got some other stuff coming up later in the year, so keep an eye out. If you go on my website, you'll see all my shows coming up. What I usually try and do is I try and keep my month, my like local spots up to date by the month. Because the West Side, all the local clubs that give me the spots in the last, at the last minute. And then I try and post my out of town weekends at least another month ahead so people know that I'm coming to their town. Because that, as a comedian, that's of course what you get the most is like, when are you going to be here? And I was there last year. Who the fuck were you?
Nice.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That's pretty solid booking. Shit.
The hope is that I can in the next, if this weekend goes very well, I can really focus on more headlining gigs in the latter half of the year. And then, like I said, kind of put an album together, hopefully next year. Or hopefully, I think next year or maybe by the end of this year, we'll see how it goes.
That'd be good.
Yeah, I think that what I'm realizing is that these days, you just kind of have to. There's no reason. I used to think that it was only worth putting out a long form, sort of event recording if people were going to listen, or if there was high demand for it. Let's put it that way. Stephen Wright did one album in the early '80s, and he didn't do another album until after 9/11, I think it was. And this is a guy who's constantly writing jokes, constantly creating new shows. But I think that in this day and age, I think that with the technology where it is and the ease of recording and the ease of publishing long form content, there's no reason not to. It's sure there's money involved, but I think if you can recoup, my original album really only cost me $500, which I probably recouped, not necessarily in royalties, but I have recouped in exposure. Let's put it that way. And you never know what's going to hit. I mean, the right joke at the right time could get on Sirius. I kind of want to focus on one of the things that I did. The woman who runs West Side, the booker West Side, has her own album label called FUNY Records, and she had me part of her Father's Day recording last year because Sirius will put your content on track by track. You really only need one track that they really like to get it. The idea of doing more is just to make the chances that you'll get something greater. But they'll tell you if you've got 15 minutes, record 15 minutes and submit that as 5 3-minute tracks. We're not going to look at it and go, it's not good enough. Where's your hour? If they like the content, they'll put it on. Yeah, they said that.
I did not know that. Can you say that again? Hold on. I want to clip that. Can you say that again? Like about SiriusXM?
SiriusXM has said that you don't need a full hour for them to put you on their medium. In fact, the president encouraged that if you've only got 15 minutes or 20 minutes, only put the best stuff on your tracks and submit it like that. They don't care if it's 10 minutes, 20 minutes, or an hour. Now, they do have restrictions about who they'll accept it from. So you do need a legitimate distributor. But legitimate distributors know that Sirius will take as much or as little content as you have. I mean, you need obviously 3 minutes. You need a track that they want to play. You just have one good joke. But if you've got 10 minutes, do the 10 minutes, and they will ingest that and they will play that. And most comics who do well on Sirius really only get 1 or 2 tracks on anyway. You have to be somebody like Gary Goldman or Corey Kahaney or Tammy Pescatelli or somebody who is known for having a lot of content for them to sort of absorb your whole album. And even, you go and you look at Gary Goldman, he's got 5 tracks from an album playing. That's a lot. I got none. But still, they don't need Gary. I mean, they would have been happy to take those 5 tracks. They don't need more space in their library. So yeah, I mean, and the woman, the booker at West Side, she knows that. So she puts together these sort of compilation shows where she's got 6 comics all doing 10 minutes. and gets them together and submits, 10 tracks from 5 different comics on that subject. She had me do one last year for Father's Day, and we were all doing 10 minutes. So I did 10 minutes on Father's Day. She chopped it up. That was not as successful as I wanted it to be for a variety of reasons. I was not as familiar with the material as I needed to be, and the audience was not quite feeling me the way I was expecting them to. So I've got a couple tracks that she submitted that they weren't, that this is not stuff off my album. This is actually stuff that will probably be on my next album once it's refined. Because I've refined it in the last year, and I've got, and I needed really some more time to cook it, and then it would have been better. But so she'll do, and she does those shows usually every 3 months. She did one that was Latino comics. My goal in the next album is to try and get some real specialty tracks together. I want to do something about the holidays. I want a whole track of jokes about the holidays that are still in my style, but are like that. Because then maybe, Sirius will ingest it and they'll start playing it, because it's the jokes I have start with Halloween and it's Thanksgiving and Hanukkah and Christmas into New Year's. So if I've got a holidays track that covers the topics of Halloween, of all of the end of the year holidays, that could get played regularly from October 1st to January 15th.
Huh. Yeah, and if you had something for Valentine's Day, boom.
Right, exactly.
Damn, that's really good. That's like solid info.
I didn't think about that, but
I never thought about that. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, you guys, what they have said though is that they need a real label who will distribute. But the definition of a real label is pretty narrow. Or it's pretty wide. Let's put it that way. It's pretty wide. You don't need.
Okay, so they're very loosely as a label.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I know this guy in Pennsylvania who's a New York comic. He just lives in he lives in Pennsylvania. He comes up. Mm-hmm. He's got a label, and all he did was just sort of register it all together. He registered a label to put his own albums out, and whatever the number of albums you need to have distributed as a label, he had done his own albums, and then he did a couple for friends, and that made the number that Sirius was considering. And he's a through line. Call him up and you say, how much does it cost?
That's not a bad idea. I mean, have your own label and do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the other thing about it is guys like you who don't necessarily or don't have necessarily the pull to fill a venue for an hour can put together a show with 6 of you all doing 10 minutes and then maybe a local headliner. And, you can all just record your, kick it together, get, whatever it costs to get the local, somebody to come and do the audio recording, if everybody, and not a bringer, you know what I mean? Like if everybody gets 7 people to come, not a bringer because you're producing it for yourself. If everybody gets 7 people to come and then, you all put in $50, that'll cover and then that'll cover the cost of the engineer for the night. And then the ticket sales will cover the cost of producing the album. And then, and then that guy sends it to Sirius. And I mean, you're sort of at that point gambling, to make sure that you're with the right people because you don't want, you want to make sure that at least one person is going to you got to get 6 people who really can do it. Right. Because the better the content, the more likely it is that they're going to absorb it, but they don't need all of that to absorb it. You could be the one funny guy and get 3 tracks on there. Who the hell knows?